Banco Beverage. Proudly serving the Lehigh Valley for over 80 years. It's 80 years. Say it with me. 80 years. It's a long time. Over 30 plus breweries distributed, including Miller, Yuengling, Pabst, Guinness, Heineken, plus a generous variety of imported and specialty brands. They are located at Crackersport Road in Allentown, PA. Can't get any more local than that, Lehigh Valley. Banco Beverage is locally owned, operated since 1933. They have an exceptional team of staff dedicated to making their customers happy. If you're interested in having Banco be your purveyor for whatever bar or establishment you own, you can go to www.bancobeverage.com. I have the information in the ads as well, and I want to thank Banco for coming on and being a sponsor. Myself and Tony are working on some projects, and we are going to be bringing some really cool content, as well as Banco is going to be providing for a lot of the things that we do event-wise. So thank you, Banco, again. Thank you, Tony, and check out Banco Beverage. Giacomo's Italian Market. What an awesome relationship that has blossomed between Never Again Studio and Giacomo's Italian Market. We've been working with them with Studio Kitchen. We've been doing their Italian sausage and going to pop-ups with them. I love Sal. I love all the guys over there. It's always awesome collaborating. And you should go check them out. They got specialty Italian items. They're famous for the cheesesteak, the sausage. I can't even list everything because everything over there on that menu is fantastic. It's a home run. They are in Easton, PA, 700 Cattell Street. That's 700 Cattell Street in Easton, PA. They are over by College Hill. It's a dope area to check out. You need to go there. They got plenty of inside seating. They got all kinds of specialty Italian things off to the side, of pasta, vodka sauce. I usually just go there because I'm not making it as good as Sal. So I pick up my vodka sauce and, I say, what's up? We got some oils and all kinds of different things. But I can't say nothing but positive things over at Giacomo's. If you know them, you know them. If you don't know them, you're crazy and you need to get over there. That's 700 Cattell Street in Easton. That's Giacomo's Italian Market. Tell Sal what's up. The Curious Plantaholic, located in Nazareth and Clinton, New Jersey. The Nazareth location was opened first, and I met Jenny. We immediately hit it off. I knew we would start working on projects. She is the energy and the breath of fresh air that Nazareth needs. I started buying plants off of her, went down a rabbit hole. Now I got a bunch of plants I got to take care of. I'm trying my hardest. People are helping me. What an awesome shop for plants, retail. The energy in there is amazing. The employees in there are amazing. It's a plant and supply store focused on connecting with local communities, and boy, do they do a fantastic job at that. I can't say enough about these guys. You need to go to their locations and check them out, but they also have plants for sale online. It's thecuriousplantaholic.com, and right now they have two locations, which is Nazareth, and the other one is Clinton, New Jersey. Please check them out, and you can get more information at curiousplantaholic.com. I'm going to be working with Jenny on some other projects as well, so you will see us kind of creating a vibe and some things going on in Nazareth. We're really going to help kind of revitalize and get some things going on in Nazareth. So if you want to, please check out the Curious Plantaholics in Nazareth. Support local, support us. They support the podcast. Thank you so much for coming on as a sponsor. All right, I set a timer. Never Again Radio, episode I have no clue. Welcome to Never Again Radio. How are you?
Thank you. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. We were talking before the show. We've been trying to do this for forever. I don't know how I stumbled upon following you. I don't know if it was from the bar or if you were bartending at the time. And then I'm a big art person and I just loved what you were doing. And then the more I was following you, I was like, this is really interesting. I don't know how she got into any of this. So that is why I brought you to my creepy basement.
Oh, thank you.
So I just kind of want to get into, how did you start even getting involved in art? Where did all this journey of just creativity and everything start from?
So I've been doing art, and it's going to sound so stupid and cliche, but way back as far as I can remember. I'm talking like elementary school. I always knew I wanted to get into art. And
can you pull the mic up just a little bit?
Good.
Right, perfect. Yeah, you're good. I just didn't want to cover your face. You're so small. This is so difficult. You're fine, though.
I need a booster seat.
You're good.
But yeah, so I knew I wanted to do art. Didn't know, because I was in elementary school, didn't know what way I wanted to go and just wanted to be coloring all the time. Didn't care about anything else. And then as I got older, I was like, all right, I need to keep pursuing this art. And my dad was an art teacher. My grandfather was an artist. So it was all in my family. So I ended up going to Kutztown University and I majored in art education.
Kutztown, home of ring bologna. The home of
Yes.
ring bologna. Did your, growing up in a family that does art, was it kind of not pushed upon you, but at an early age, did they kind of just see if you would progress into following along with kind of what they did because they were into art like that?
Yeah, for sure, I was definitely not pushed into it. It was highly encouraged.
Yeah.
So when I did continue with it, it was like, all right,
like, yes.
yeah. What are we going to do now? We've got her.
Yeah.
But so I went to Kutztown and I minored in art history and photography and non-loom, which was a weaving course. I did that. So that was that whole end of it. I taught for a little bit.
Did you like Kutztown in general?
I did.
Yeah.
I grew up in Allentown, so Kutztown wasn't too far from home.
No.
It was far enough that I could stay there, and it gave me that whole college experience where I felt like I was away. But when I needed to come home and do laundry and get like
25-minute ride.
get an actual meal, I'd show up with my basket and eat and then go back to school.
That's cool.
Yeah.
When you were there, was it just primarily, did you get to just focus on the creative side, or were you having to take other courses on top of it, or were you kind of just deep into just creative stuff with the photography and all that?
So my first couple years, because my dad was like, get all the BS courses out of the way,
Yeah.
which is what I did. Math, sociology.
Yep.
Even though I love English, I don't mind it. I love reading, but I wanted to get all that out of the way. Math, it was like, because I wanted to maintain being on Dean's List, and I had to keep going into my college professor just so that I would get the B to stay on the Dean's List,
Yeah.
which was huge. And he's like, all right, so 5 + 5 is, and I'm like, 1, 2,
Yeah, I still use my
3,
fingers.
4.
I'm terrible at that.
It was horrible.
Yeah.
I remember going in for my final, and he was like, you need to get at least a C on this, which was big, to
Yeah.
get the B in the class. And I was just like, here's my paper. I
What'd you
was
get?
so scared. I ended up getting a B.
Nice.
I got, yeah. So it was good.
Yeah, it probably felt good to get all that out of the way. I remember when I was kind of on a path early on. I didn't know what I was going to do. And in high school, none of my classes counted as college credits after I was done. I found that out.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, what does that mean? And they're like, you have to take them all over. So I attempted to get all that out of the way, and I never was able to do it. And that was kind of the journey of me trying to figure out what all this is that I'm doing now. But like, getting all that out of the way was probably so freeing, because then you could just focus on photography and weaving and the stuff that you really wanted, which I feel like a lot of people who want to go for creative stuff like that, a lot of times they do struggle with the other side of it. And I think a lot of people probably don't get that out of the way. So what was that like to get that out of the way and then just go to college and do fun stuff?
Yeah, it was awesome. Just to get all that done, and then I could really focus on what I wanted to be there for. And by my senior year, I mean, it was amazing. And then I got into doing all the student teaching and all the hours that I needed to graduate then to get my degree to be certified K-12.
So you were going for teaching, or was was teaching the main thing that you were going for?
It was,
Yeah.
yeah, art education. And then after I had graduated, I did teach for a little bit. I started out student teaching, substitute teaching. Everyone's like,
what grade?
Get your foot in the door. So I was doing elementary school, which kind of, when you substitute teach, you don't necessarily get to say where you want to be.
Yeah.
And a couple times I was put into middle school, and
Oh no.
dude, I wanted to walk out. I
Yeah.
think I had one of my worst days ever in middle school. I'm not going to say like what district or what school or whatever, but it was horrible.
Well, I mean, looking back on it, like from my perspective, it was like, or anyone's perspective really, is when you have a substitute teacher, it's like, oh, the day's like it's a day off.
It's a free day. Yeah, let's throw the
And then if you have someone
spitballs
who wants to actually teach, because like when you get older, you look at situations where it was like, oh, like that was somebody who was trying to become a teacher and they had to do this in order to get to there, and you were just ruining their day because you thought you had a free day because your teacher wasn't in.
Exactly. And I remember doing that. We would like peek our heads in and see a substitute and we're like, sucker.
Yeah, or if like I remember we had a teacher who was having a baby, so they were out for like a while, so then it was like, yeah, we got this substitute teacher. We could do whatever we want. We don't got to do homework. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you went through that battle?
I went through that. I actually was a long-term sub, and the morning routine was actually coming in and doing math, which we all know how I feel about math. And I could barely figure out these math questions that I'm putting up on the board and having these kids come up and do, and they're like, am I doing this right? I'm like, yeah, it looks good to me.
That was like when I used to check IDs. They're like, there'd be a bunch of people at the door, and I'm like, I don't know how to do this math to figure out if you're 21. They're like, we good? I'm like, yeah. Go move on.
It's so crazy too, because even like when I was bartending, I would like look at an ID, and you knew then, but because it would not have been good if I left someone drink that wasn't. Yeah. But at like that first card of the night, I'd be like, oh, and you're doing that math in your head. And
I'm terrible with it.
Yeah, same. But even now, like to be 21, just when you were born, I'm like, holy crap, is this real?
Yeah, they look like children.
They do, yeah. I actually ran into a couple that were students of mine that came in to drink. I'm like, how is this possible? Like, I can't serve you. You're 12.
It goes by fast. The last time I was in a bar, I was trying to think where I was. Maybe it was College Hill Tavern. I'm over at Giacomo's, so we were like, oh, let's just go get beers after work. And then the college kids were coming in. I'm like, how old are these kids? And they're like 21. And I'm like, they look like children.
Right?
I'm just like, oh my God, I'm the old person in the bar. It goes by like that.
It does, yeah.
That's funny. So then you now are substitute teaching, and like, where are you at with that? You like it?
It was okay. It was an income, and I was still trying to figure out if I wanted to be teaching art, or what I wanted to do. And then when you get your foot in the door and you see like what you have to go through, because it still is, you have to follow course objectives and outlines, and everything is laid out pretty, like I would get the free reign of what I wanted to do, but you still had to cover certain things.
Yeah.
So you had to follow that guideline. So it wasn't, I didn't like the fact of, saying this is what you have to do all the time. I didn't like that, like structured setting. I wanted the more freedom to do what I wanted to do. So that's when I kind of branched away from that.
So when you first started feeling that way, what were you kind of being drawn towards? Were you like trying to like, because I mean, from trying to look at it from your point of view, when you're doing that and then you're like, this isn't giving me kind of the itch from the creative standpoint that I want, do you start looking into tattooing? Like where do you start, or do you start looking into design work? Like where does it pull you where you can actually see more freedom before you can take the jump, because it is an income and you have bills and everything else? So like, what was kind of your thought process at that point? Where did you start leaning towards?
So it's funny you say tattoo work. So a friend of mine who did a lot of my work, I was like, well, do you have any room for an apprentice? And he's like, well, not at the moment. We're really not looking, but feel free to come in my shop just so you're in that environment of a tattoo parlor and seeing people come in, how it all runs, how we come up with ideas. And I'm like, okay, this is really cool. So that's when I started trying to think of a way that I could make money, not by tattooing because there wasn't a spot open, but what could I do? So I was trying to get the wheels turning. And at that point, there's like so much going on. There's so much going on in my head all the time.
Yeah.
But I had, so I'm going to rewind a little bit. So I had left teaching and I went into an early learning center. So I still was kind of in that learning environment, but I was a room supervisor. And I was working with like little kids. And so when I was there for 12 years. This was after I left like the public teaching and whatever. So anyway, I was there. And then I had someone reach out to me, and this gets me into that whole creating and doing different things. She had a dog that had passed away, and she goes, "Oh, can you draw my dog for me?" I'm like, "Yeah, just give me a photo and I'll draw your dog." So this kind of overlapped with me going into the tattoo shop, just being in that creative environment, and I would sit and start doing dog drawings. And the one day I was working on it and I was showing the shop owner, and he goes, "You know what?" He's like, "This isn't bad." He goes, You're doing a good job. What else can you do?" So I would start sketching other things. And he's like, "I don't want to push you away from tattooing." He's like, "But you can make an income off of this." He's like, "Did you ever think of doing pet portraits?" And so that got the wheel rolling then to start kind of going in that direction. And then that's when I started up the Twisted Plot, and I started doing portraits. So that kind of gets us to that whole...
Was social media the way it is now, or was it early on? Like, because I I like asking this question just because when I started doing everything I'm doing, there was like stages of how social media was. When it was early on, I was selling a ton of t-shirts just on Facebook, but then Facebook turned into like, they realized you can be running a business there, and then you had to start paying for things. Then when I was on Instagram, it was only pictures, and like you could only upload pictures from your phone. It isn't like how it is now where like I can do it from my computer at this point. Like, but Instagram was like a very like, it had a lot of boundaries and you couldn't really push it a lot. And then now you can run commercials and use people's music, and like, because I used to get flagged all the time. And they'd be like, because I would make these weird videos when I was learning how to edit, and then I would want to put music to it, so I would put music in the actual edit, and then when I would upload it, they'd be like, "This is copyrighted." And I'd be like, "I'm allowed to use it." But now it's like there's almost any, you can do whatever you want on there. You can literally take your phone, cut a commercial, use somebody else's music, and make money off of a product that you put inside the video. So like, I was just intrigued to see like, where was everything at with social media that you even thought you could utilize that to make money, because people finding out that you're a pet portrait that's word of mouth.
Yeah. So in the beginning, looking back, I think I was only on Facebook, because I don't even think Instagram was really that big of a thing then. And if it was, I didn't even really know about it. So I was doing Facebook, and then I remember uploading that very first pet portrait that I did, and someone was like, "Oh, you did this? I didn't know you could do that. Can you do one for me?" So then it kind of just started snowballing, and
where did you get the name from?
Quick. So the Twisted Plot was after my dog. He actually just recently passed away about 5 weeks-ish ago, but he's a plot hound. And it was just a twist on words. When we first got him, I mean, he was nuts. Like, the dog was my baby towards the end. But when we had rescued him, I think he was about maybe like not even 6 months old. He was little. And we brought him home, and I remember he would just kind of corner me in the room and just bark at me nonstop. And I couldn't figure it out. And then that turned into humping my leg. So I would literally be pulling myself with this dog attached to me across the room. And I'm like, "You are the most twisted plot hound ever." And that name just stuck.
That's cool.
The Twisted Plot.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so it just, everything snowballed pretty quick. And then when Instagram did come out,
it's fun when you start making little moves like that, or just when it starts moving, because like I know what it's like to try and take something like from a creative standpoint, and you want to monetize or make money off of it, and it's not easy to do. And then like you get into something, and then you're like, this isn't what I thought it was, and it's not really scratching that itch. But then like, you know, I remember at a point when I was doing all this where I was like, "Yo, why can't I do this all the time?" Like, I like how this makes me feel so much that like the driving force behind doing all of this is because I just wanted to do whatever I wanted to do that
I want to do. Like, I didn't want to be stuck at a job and be waiting to go home to only have 4 hours to get to do what I want. Like, why can't I
Yeah.
live a life where I can just express myself and create? But it's not easy to do that. So, like, when you're trying to figure it out and then you start getting contacted by people, it's like being out in the ocean and you see land and you're like, oh yeah, that's the way I should go. And it's a really cool feeling when people are like, hey, I want one. And then you got work kind of piling up a little bit and then you see the business kind of forming. What was that like for you to start getting people to start recognizing you for a talent that you had?
It felt so freaking good. It felt like almost like what I was supposed to be doing. It
Yeah.
just fit. And it made me feel like me. And I was smiling more and I was happy. And it just made everything better.
Yeah.
Because you are doing what you're supposed to do and
Yeah.
what you feel like you're meant to be doing. And I knew I wasn't supposed to be in a school. I knew I wasn't supposed to be, even though that's what I thought I wanted to do. And then I discovered it wasn't. And I didn't, in the back of my head too, I didn't want to be a letdown or a disappointment to my parents, because you're going to school, you're spending all this money, and then to not do it, it's like, well, what the hell? Like, why didn't you know that before you went? Because I didn't know.
I think it takes a lot of not knowing what, I mean, it's so hard to explain because, I mean, you hit it right there when you were like, you just know. And that's like, people will tell you that, well, like, oh, well, you'll just know. And you can't describe that feeling, because when you know, it's the feeling of knowing. And it's like,
Yeah.
when you get into that from a creative standpoint, like I always tell people for advice with stuff is like, sometimes I get on a road and I know I'm supposed to be on that road and I don't know how long I'm going to be on that road. Cause like now I've been down so many different roads and I've been trying so hard to even get to where I'm going next. Is like, I'm like, all right, I'm on a road and there's no roadblocks. Like, let's just go as fast as we can and keep going straight, because this isn't going to last, or it is.
Yeah.
But like, this feels right, go for it. And
Yep.
like, that's kind of how I dictate stuff now. But like in the early days, when that first hits like that, it's like, oh, like this is cool. Like I get to do what I want. So like, how was that for you to have the business coming in all the time? Like, was it steady, or was there a point early on that you knew that you were going to be able to just be doing this?
So it took a little bit of catching on. But then once it did start going, I just kept getting commission after commission after commission. And I kind of panicked at first because I'm like, oh my God, I need to do big girl things now and get like a calendar to write stuff down
Yeah,
to
'cause
keep
now-
stuff in line.
yeah.
And how are people paying? And, did they pay? And so all these things that you have
I
to
should
start
trademark.
keeping. Yeah.
Taxes.
Yes, I know. Now I'm like, oh, can we just do cash? And it's like, it never happened.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was kind of terrifying. But it's still awesome.
Yeah.
It's such a good feeling. You feel so accomplished and you feel like you're worth something.
Yeah. And it's what you want to do.
Yeah.
And it's weird how like a conversation and then, like I look back on stuff now and it's hard to talk to younger people, because the only reason I know this is because I've lived long enough to experience not giving up on something. So it's like when I look back at everything that's gone on in my life, including like big time losses or like things that I never thought would make my life normal, it's really the only thing that put me on a trajectory. Yes, I got it out to where I am now. And it's like, if this wouldn't have happened and that wouldn't have happened, or I wouldn't have done this, it's like all of that was kind of like a learning process to get to a point or a road in order for you to even accept or to do that. But I mean, to hear how, if you wouldn't have been hanging out in the tattoo shop, or, that moment of that guy being like, hey, you should go in that direction. And I remember even with food, like, I recently told my friend, like, I do all this stuff and like he supports me, but he doesn't look at me as the t-shirt person. We met each other when we were 10. So I'm always that kid that he knew that I would say to meet me halfway, and then I never would. And we still bust each other's balls about it. But the one day he said to me, he goes, why do you waste your time doing all this other stuff when you should be cooking? And that stuck with me. And then that gave me confidence with opening the restaurant, because I'm like, man, like he saw that so long ago that was such a talent that not a lot of people are paying attention to.
Yeah.
And it's like those moments hold so much value if you pay attention to them, or you even just roll back on them, because that was just a shit chance that he would be walking by and then you'd now be in a direction to start doing portraits. That
Yeah.
essentially you would start your entire life off of what you want to do creative.
Yeah, because I look back too, and I'm like, I could have just like let that roll and not really
Yeah.
thought about what he said and been like stuck in my own way and tunnel vision and been like, no, well, this is what I think I should be doing, and just not listening. And
Yeah, and a lot of like because there's a lot of insecurities with like being creative as well. So if like you would have
Yeah.
been insecure in that moment and been like, oh, whatever, I don't like my stuff anyways. There's been so many talented people I know that never did anything with their talent because they told themselves they didn't like, oh, I don't, it's never good enough. That's not good enough.
Yeah.
So it's like if you would have had that mentality at that moment, you could have just been still trying to figure out what you want to do.
yeah, I look back too on the very first portrait I did, and it really wasn't that great. At the time, I was like, oh, well, this is pretty cool. Like,
Yeah.
it came out good. But looking back now at how far I've come, I'm like, oh,
It's
my
crazy
God.
when you keep putting work into it.
Yeah. If you keep practicing and just putting those hours in every day, and you'll get better. You might not see it in that moment and think you're getting better, but you are.
I talked to my brother about that. He's like trying to, like a lot of, I have three brothers and everyone's creative in a different way. And it comes from a lot from my father. And so like I'm 11 months apart from my brother Richard, and like he called me yesterday and he's been working on this project, and it's just for like creative stuff. Like he knows that, and he's had this conversation with me. He's like, I can't do what you're doing. I have kids. So he's like, my life now is to let those kids know that, you know, like he's like, mom and dad never pushed us to like do something creative because we grew up in a different time when like you either went to school or you just got a job. So he's like, I'm really trying to work with the girls on like having them grow up and do what they want to do and not be stuck in a job just to pay bills.
Yeah.
So like he started this creative project, and I was like, he's a little self-conscious on how some of it's going to work. And I'm like, dude, I said, just do it. I said, this went from me doing an audio podcast in my apartment with my friends while we were drunk to I'm opening a restaurant. I'm like, that's crazy. And I was like, but that's only because I kept working on it, and it changed over the years. And like, I kept an umbrella of never again, but like everything I worked on, I kept working on. And if you, it's as stupid as, and as cliche as it sounds, is like, if you keep working on something, it definitely you see progress and change. And like, so to look at from your first thing, and if you don't stop drawing and you get better and better and better and you learn from your mistakes, you're going to be miles ahead of who you were back then.
Yeah. And I started out doing just with graphite pencils because I wasn't confident enough to do the colored pencils. And then once I started the color pencils, I'm like, I'm really not going back to that. I still do enjoy doing a graphite drawing every so often, but I love working with colored pencils. And it can, even though it's just colored pencils, it's still a little tricky to get the hang of it to make it look almost like it's paint, which
Yeah.
is what I try to do.
Yeah. So now your journey kind of, you're picking up these portraits and doing all this different stuff. When do you start, or like, and I don't want to go too far ahead, but like, when did you start getting into the beer labels? Like,
So when I was still a supervisor at the Early Learning Center, Lost Tavern Brewing had just opened up in Hellertown. And craft breweries were just becoming a thing at that time. They weren't like how they are now. I mean,
No.
it's just freaking exploded and they're everywhere. And so when they had opened, I remember my dad, he was fishing with my brother and it had just opened. And he's like, yeah, we went to this really cool little brewery in Hellertown. You got to check it out sometime. And so one day after work, I stumbled in, and because it was still super new, there weren't a whole lot of people in there. And the one owner had his kids where I worked. So I already knew him.
oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And he was one of the co-owners. And then he introduced me to another, there were 4 at the time that had owned it. And he introduced me to Kenny, who is who I work with on the labels. And so I started out by just being there all the time. I was always at the bar just drinking, and they weren't even canning at the time. There was nothing. It was just what was on tap. So pretty much every weekend, if not more, that's where I was.
Yeah.
So I got to know them all really well. But yeah, not a bad thing.
No. I didn't get into the craft brewery stuff at the time. I missed that. But before that, I would go to the social club down the road. But I always liked, you know, going. It was just a spot to hang, especially in like my early 20s. Like we just went to the club, and then I started like going, because I worked factories a lot while I was trying to do creative stuff. But like I would always end up just hanging out at the bar, and then I started bartending just because I hung out there so much. And then when I started bartending, that's kind of what broke me from being shy. And then like, because you have to talk to people, and then once I started talking to people, that's probably where you can bring it back to where the networking version of like who I am completely came from, was just working at bars. And then I don't know, when I lived in Virginia, you just go to a bar.
Yeah.
There was nothing to do, you just go to a bar. Like,
yeah,
I don't know.
It's so funny.
That's just what I did.
Even just like growing up back in, people that run into me when I was bartending, they were like, you know, you were so quiet in high school and as far back as we can remember. They're like, what happened? I'm like, bartending, dude. That's what happened.
You have to talk to people.
You
it doesn't
have to
matter if, you know, like, because I was always shy and like bad with girls, so, and still am, but like at that time, it's like, it doesn't matter who's in front of you. You have to wait on them. So whether it's like the most attractive person in the room or an older person who's going to give you shit, because like I remember the old guys being like, there's not enough head on my beer, you're pouring it wrong, and then like just yelling at you because when they come in, you don't have their shots ready. Like,
yep.
You take a beat. I've had drinks thrown in my face. Like, it'll change you as a person. So like, and then breaking up fights, and then like having to like intervene with like a couple that like, there was always like I don't know how it was that there, but like I've worked at a bunch of different bars, but like when you start getting involved with the regulars coming in, and there's like that toxic couple where they're fine until they're drunk, and then now you're like breaking them up from fighting, and it's just like, why are you here again? Like, I don't think people realize, like, then you're a therapist to some people that come in.
Yes, dude.
I loved bartending. I missed it. I missed the money. I missed the interacting. But like when I hung up, I'm done with bartending. I was done. There was just fights constantly. Like I said, I had drinks thrown in my face. Like I was like, I'm done with this.
Yeah.
I'm too old for this shit.
Yeah, I mean, working at a brewery is a little bit different than
I was
being
in a shot
like
in a beer bar. I was at a biker bar up on top of the hill.
Yeah, I mean, it's different than that, but some things ended up, you know, where, like you said, where couples would come in, they'd be sitting there all happy in the beginning, and you drink, and it just changes you as a person. And I'm like, holy shit, dude, like, who are you?
Did you start bartending there right away, or were you doing the labels yet, or did you just kind of just start picking up shifts?
Yeah, so I didn't bartend right away. I remember they started doing crowlers, so it was just the 32 ounce like big cans to go. And Kenny was like, hey, we're going to do like a couple runs. Do you want to come out with that original can? And I was like, dude, yeah, that's freaking awesome.
Well, yeah.
And
were you still doing the portraits at the time?
I was. Yeah. So then I did the crowler, and then I had actually at some point put in an application when I saw they were hiring. And they didn't freaking hire me at first. I was like, guys, like, I know Tony, like, I know you now. I'm getting to know everyone else. I'm giving you my money. Like, can I get a job? And they're like, well, we have a lot of applications, and we're trying to like wean through people, and we still have too many bartenders, so we'll see what happens. And then the one day Kenny calls me, and he's like, hey, can you stop in? We're going to talk some labels. And I'm like, yeah. So I left my job, get there, and 4 of them are sitting at the table. And I'm like, what's going on here, guys? And they're like, this is a job interview, sit down. And I'm like, wait, this is happening? What are we going to talk about?
I didn't bring my briefcase.
Yeah, I know, right? And so I sat there, and we just discussed craft beer, and they're like, well, what does craft beer mean to you? And so they're going through all these questions to see how I truly felt outside of just doing art. So I guess I did good.
That's cool.
I guess I got the job.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, because like I never looked at it from an owner in a craft brewery like that, where the person would have to give a shit about the beer.
Yeah, you're selling it.
Yeah,
like,
and would have to like know about
person.
it. Yeah. It's not just like, hey, what do you want? A Miller Lite? Cool.
Right.
Shot, get away from me.
And it was funny because some people would come in and they would sit down and they're like, I'll take a Miller Lite. I'm like, get out. Just go. But then you would get these, it was like broad, where like one person would come in, they're like, just give me a beer. I don't care what it is.
Yeah.
And people didn't know at the time too with craft, like, with the craft beer, what it really was. And then you would get that opposite end where it was like these complete beer snobs that would come in and they're like swirling it around and sniffing it and like tasting it. But you had to know your stuff because you had to deal with those people too.
Yeah. Probably the snobs more than anyone else.
Yeah. And then there was a point too, like we got really busy where we would have 4 bartenders on and it would be like 6, 7 people deep at the bar and just like so crowded. And I remember being exhausted by the end of the shift. Like you didn't get to eat. You were lucky if you got to run to the bathroom. And I mean, you were working hard because sometimes people are like, oh, you're just a bartender. You're just serving beer. Like you're not working. I'm like, dude,
it's such hard work.
I'm on my feet for 12 hours. Like, yeah, I'm working. So
how many labels are you doing at this point? Like, first of all, let's back it up. What was the first label you designed for them? What was the logo?
Oh my gosh. I'm trying to think what the very first one was outside of that Crowler. I honestly can't even remember. I've done a lot. I'm talking probably like 100 different
that's crazy
labels that I've done for them. Like way back. I honestly can't remember what
was some
my
of the
first
early
can
stuff
was.
you did. Do you remember the early stuff?
Yes, yeah. So we started doing what was like their core flagship labels. So Grace was an American wheat, and that one had a dove on it. And then the Seeker was their logo.
Yeah.
So that I didn't come up with. That was already established. So that one I just created a scene, and we tried pulling history from Hellertown. So the gristmill was in that one. And then Winter Galley, that was another one every December that comes out. So
what a fun process. So what do you guys do? Sit down and like, do you work with the one guy specifically? And like you guys just kind of like go back and forth like you would selecting a tattoo?
Yeah.
So much fun.
We have like this, I like to call it like this love-hate relationship. I love you, Kenny. And
you have to with that.
Yeah, no, he's freaking awesome. Like we gel, we work so well together. And so initially he would sometimes it would be just like the beer name first. He's like, yeah, we've got this awesome beer name and we want to try to come up with a drawing that goes with this. Or sometimes it's this idea first of what we want the can to be and then the name will follow, but everything has to get approved. You can't just like randomly come up with a beer name and then it's good to print. So there's all these stages. But there's been times where Kenny will text me at like whatever. He has like these freaking brain farts. I swear I ended up putting my phone into like sleep mode at a certain time because if not, 1 a.m, my phone's pinging and I'm like, what is this? And it's this idea that he has. And he's like, what do you think? Should we go with it?
Yeah.
And my sketchbook's by the side of the bed and I'll start like drawing things and writing it down because if not, I would forget. But that's kind of the whole process of it.
That's fun.
Yeah.
I used to do that with Rizart when we would do the T-shirts. There's something about collaborating with somebody because you were on the end of where Rizart would be and I was on the other end where I'd be like, hey, here's the idea. And then he'd be like, what do you think about this? And I'd be like, oh, that looks so cool. And then like you're taking an idea and you're just bouncing. Very similar to getting tattooed, which was one of my favorite parts once I don't know, like when I got my first tattoo, it was like intimidating and I was like, oh, what, like my first tattoo. And then where I'm at now, it's like I enjoy the process of creating it with the tattoo artist and like, here's what I want to do, kind of take free reign to do what you want. And then when you get that back and forth with the artist, it's one of my very favorite things to do that like, not a lot of people are involved with, not a lot of people know about, and it's just this moments of back and forth where you're like, this looks cool, what about this, what about that? And then when it's created and then it goes into production, which the production part is always a pain in the ass for what I'm talking about or like in general, but the creative part, and then to take it and then we're like, fuck yeah, this is awesome. Then I take it over to a screen printer, then you see what they have to do with it, and then from there it goes on to a t-shirt or something. It's one of the coolest things that I've been fortunate to do because I can't draw. So like there was my creativeness is done through other things. So for me to be able to paint with that person, it really hits itches that like I was never able to actually scratch on my own.
Yeah.
I really, when you said to like pull out and start drawing, it triggered so many things where he would hit me up late night and be like, what do you think about this? Or would you want to do a shirt like that? And then it would be like these late night conversations of just back and forth to like really come up with some of the coolest things that like built the beginnings of everything that I did.
Yeah, yeah.
It's fun. I love doing that.
Yeah.
I didn't know, I kind of figured that's kind of what went into doing the cans, but that's so cool that you got to do that.
Yeah, and we just feed off of each other.
Yeah.
And if he sees something and he's like, well, I love this, but let's tweak this a little bit.
And you have to be that way with the person, because you'll either regret it and it won't be what you want, or you can't just keep letting the person do. You can't keep thinking, like, you can't do it in the sense of like everything that you're going to do is a home run every time. Like,
Right.
you almost should not like something on the first time it comes through, because then that's how it becomes what it's going to become.
Yeah, yeah. And I'll be honest, in the beginning, it took me a little while to get used to that whole concept of things, because I wanted it to be perfect.
Yeah.
I wanted to be like, yeah, I'm doing a great job. Like, I'm going to one-off it and this is going to be it. And at first, when it wasn't, when he started to speak his mind, I'm like, what the hell? Who the hell
Yeah,
are you
who
to
do you
tell me
think
that
you
this
are?
isn't right? But
Yeah.
I mean, it was for the best, and it made me better too,
Because
because
it's two visions
Yeah.
to create one thing.
Yep.
Which is not, it either you're just going to hit and it's not going to work, which you kind of learn early on that you can or cannot do that with somebody.
Yeah. If you truly want to be doing what you're doing, you'll make it work.
Yeah.
And gel with that person. But
Yeah.
he's such a great person too that I can't stay mad at him ever.
No, I mean, I think it takes a specific relationship like that to create something. It's what I've been doing with Gina with food. Like, we butt heads a lot, but it's like a brother-sister type thing where it's like, all right, well, I need you to push me in this direction because that is something that needs to be changed in here, or you need to be drug over here because this is what I need you to be doing, and I know that you can do that. So like,
Yeah.
it's okay for me to ask you to come over here, even though it's out of your comfort to do it. But that's what makes the best version of something, is when you let down and you have uncomfortable moments
Yep.
to create a double vision. Because if you don't do that, it's one vision, it's not two.
Yeah.
And to make it line up, it's not.
Yeah.
It's fun, but it's also uncomfortable.
Yeah. And he always says to me, he's like, well, I do it because I'm pushing you because I know what you're capable of.
Yeah.
And he's like, I know when you get mad, things come back and you're just like, bam, here it is.
Here you go.
Yeah.
Fuck you.
Yeah.
So with everything that's going on now, like, to kind of bring it up to speed, like, so you're doing the portraits and then you're still doing the labeling and you're bartending, and like, where does that kind of leave everything that you're doing now? Or like, we kind of caught up to what's going on? Are you just doing labeling? Like, 'cause, obviously if you've done over 100 cans, other breweries start reaching out to you, and then other people start wanting cans made, just
Yeah.
like how the portraits went with the beginning of that. And then now you have another whole thing that is an option that you're offering.
Yeah. So pretty much there's one other brewery that I've done a couple labels for, but it's this contract that I have with Lost Tavern that I'm solely with them, because we've worked so hard over the course. I've been there, I think it's going on, we'll be celebrating our 7th year, but I think I've been with them for about 6.
Yeah.
So we've created and worked hard for this branding that people see it and they know right away. They're like, well, that's Lost Tavern,
Yeah.
which is what you want. And even though we try to make the labels look different, it's still in my style. Like,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
can't
yeah.
really change what I'm doing. Sometimes I try and it doesn't work, and I'm like, I need to just stick to,
Yeah,
what I'm
because
doing.
if you went and did that with another company, it would just look like
It would still
a Lost
look-
Tavern
Yeah.
label that just doesn't have their name on it.
Yep. So, but yeah, that's so I'm not bartending anymore. I was doing that until not that long ago. And I was diagnosed with lupus. So just being on my feet for that long just kept getting harder and harder, and I was put on different medications and treatments, and it just made it that not doable. So
How's that been to deal with your life and everything?
it sucks.
Yep.
It pretty much sucks ass every single day.
Yeah.
And it took a really long time for doctors to figure out what was wrong because I was sick for pretty long. And I was going to different hospitals, and I even had one doctor, they were like, oh, you have depression. That's what it is. Like, you're really not sick. We can't find anything wrong with you. I'm like, are you freaking kidding? Like, I waited months to get in, and you're telling me I'm depressed. Well, now I'm depressed because I gave you my money and you didn't fucking tell me what was wrong with me. So, but yeah, it just took the right doctors. I was going to wrong doctors. I was going to neurology and just like normal practitioner doctors, family doctors. But I shouldn't like badmouth family doctors or any doctors, but my family doctor was like, well, I think you are going to just the wrong sets and go to a rheumatologist. So once I did, they started running blood work and everything started coming back. And that's how they found out I had lupus.
Yeah. But at least you had direction for overcoming something instead of not knowing what's going on.
Yeah. I mean, it was hard. Everything from Lyme disease, which I did test positive for, and they thought maybe that's what stemmed it, and I was just having like neurological issues from that, but it went like way deeper. And for a while I was like, well, maybe I am mental. Maybe this is like something, it starts to like play with your head. But you know your own body and you have to keep pushing. And as much as I didn't want to have like that diagnosis, at least I knew and can be treated, and there's no cure for it. And it's hard. I always say I've been doing chemo treatments, so that's why sometimes I'm like, what? Like, I couldn't remember the first can because I'm like, chemo brain's a freaking thing, dude.
Yeah.
Like, I can't even remember what year it is sometimes. But yeah, just seeking, the right medical help. And
it seems like because you're public about it.
Yeah.
On your Instagram, which I like because it's inspiring how you carry yourself through everything you're doing.
Thank you.
And meeting you now, like, you definitely come off strong on social media, but then meeting you and interviewing you, you're like a very strong person and you carry yourself. And some people would be defeated in your shoes, and you're just kind of like, well, this is what I am and this is what I'm going through now. But it seems like in between that, the art's not stopping and the creating's not stopping. And I loved seeing that because I didn't know where your social media was going to go when you started coming publicly out with it, but then hearing you and talking to you and getting your entire story up until now, it's very inspiring that you continue to just keep doing what you want to do without letting anything stop that.
Thank you. Yeah, there's definitely some days where you do feel defeated, and it's kind of like behind closed doors where you sit and cry because you have to. It's like you'll lose it. And a lot of times I find myself too also laughing at myself because I have to.
Yeah.
It's like one of those things, if you don't laugh, you'll continue to cry. And it is a huge mental game. So I have to just try to keep that positive outlook on things, even though like deep down inside, I know I'm like, my body is pretty much giving up on itself. And there's days where if I do need to lay down and sleep, I do it. I used to not. I used to think laying down and sleeping was just like this huge weakness. And I'm like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
I'm not a napper.
I love a good
like,
nap.
I'm so like anti-nap. And now
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, there's the sofa. I'm laying down.
Yeah.
So you just have to listen to your body and just do what's right for it. And art helps big time. Keeps me busy.
Yeah. Where are you at with all of your art and everything? I mean, because this kind of like came into your lap, and then now that you actually know what's going on, and you stopped bartending, like, where's everything at with you? Because, I mean, this isn't like something where it's like, oh, my knee hurts. Like, obviously it's completely changed your life. So, like, where is it kind of laying at now? Like, what are you doing, right now? Are you still doing labeling? Or, are you bringing in the portrait stuff still? Like, where is your kind of life settling after kind of everything with the diagnosis and all that?
Yeah, still going with portraits, have them coming in, labels, still doing those. They're steady, which I'm so thankful for and grateful for. And
it's crazy how long they've been there and still growing.
Yeah, they're still going. And every day I'm just like finding myself to be so thankful because things suck right now. Like, even since, and I don't want to blame it on COVID anymore, but businesses closed, and I didn't even know what I would be doing with my portraits because people can't afford things. And I actually had a friend reach out and he's like, dude, you're not charging enough for your portraits. I'm like, this is not the time. I can't be
Yeah.
upping my prices right now.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, I'm dead serious. He goes, up them. He's like, if people want your work, they'll pay for it.
That's good advice.
So-
I always undersell everything, and it's like a problem I have.
Yeah,
Because then I just get stuck, and I'm just like even, and I'm just like, and then you get mad, and then you're like,
Yeah.
you're like yelling about how you're gonna change prices. Meanwhile, you should have.
Yeah.
You're
yeah.
like, I whatever then, and like you just like make up these scenarios. And even with T-shirts, it's like I've been selling them at $20 for forever, and then like doing drop shipping or like the cost of everything is way different. And
Yeah.
then like when I got my last check from drop shipping, I'm like, man, I don't make any money. And he's like, well, you're selling them for $20. And then I start looking at what other people are selling them, and they're not even putting
Yeah.
in half the effort I am, and they're selling them for $35.
I know.
And I'm like, cool, you could sell that for $22 to $25. And when anyone asks, tell them the truth. This costs a lot of money to get T-shirts made.
Yeah, and
It's
I
not-
never
I don't
felt,
pay $20 for T-shirts anymore. The last time I paid $20 for a T-shirt was at Amateur Athlete in the Westgate Mall, like when they weren't big, when it was a shoebox, and there was like that one guy who like felt bad because my mom brought 4 boys in and was spending all this money. Where T-shirts, that was 95, 96. I paid
know.
$20 for a
Dude,
T-shirt.
like, in my head,
Thrift stores are
I
expensive.
feel like that's where prices still are. Like
Yeah.
mentally,
Yeah.
I'm not where we are today. I'm
No.
just not there. And I see shoes and see people spend $300-400 on a pair of shoes, and I'm like, what? What are you doing?
Yeah.
Why? But that's like where everything is.
Did you find a comfortable spot on what to charge?
I did. Yeah. He was like, you have to look at it like you're charging almost like per square inch.
Yeah.
And how long it's taking you. And then another thing I wasn't doing was supplies.
Yeah.
I wasn't figuring in like the color pencils I use are anywhere from $3 to $4 a piece. And I'll go through one whole colored pencil on a portrait. And I'm like, all right, well, now I've got to go buy more. I have to go buy more paper. I have to buy the fixative to spray it so it doesn't fade, and all these other things that I wasn't throwing into the equation, which now I am.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like we did I mean, I've been doing pop-ups with Gina for 2 years, and like we've done catering and all this stuff, and then like you start figuring out like what you're not getting paid for. And like we just recently did something for a social club to do catering, and it was the first time where I stopped and was like, hey, like we got to go drive around and buy all that food. And like when I have to do that, that's like 2 to 3 hours of my time. I'm like, plus that's gas, plus
Yeah.
I'm not figuring in what the membership is to get into the building. And like I'm like, we need to get paid for all of that, because or like my network that I can get everything at cheaper because of the hard work I built in and put in these relationships with people. And I'm like, I never charged for any of that, and I never charged for like my prep time. And we would always just be like, yeah, let's just do it. And then like now where we're at, it's like we don't want to waste our time anymore breaking even. She's got kids, she's married, we're trying to she's getting babysitters, or like her husband's trying to figure stuff out. And then it's like my life has got all this stuff going on. And it's like when you add all that up, that costs extra money.
Yeah.
And then if you don't charge for that, you're either upset all the time or you're breaking even. And both of those suck.
Yeah. Yeah. I used to feel so bad.
Yeah. For no reason, because the people
Yeah.
are willing to pay more.
Yeah. Yeah. Or I'll have someone say, well, can you shoot me like what your prices are? And if I do that, then I don't hear back from them. Now I'm just like,
I don't care.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
I can't lower my price just for you.
Yeah, because like when we send in the final thing, I ask them what their, hey, well, what's your budget? Because like, I have friends in business, so like, we'll start with that. And then sometimes people are like, well, I don't know. And I was like, all right, well, that didn't work. Yeah. Now we're back to me breaking even. So like, he was like, all right, about this. And then, we sat down and we talked, and it was funny because like they accepted our offer, and it was still, we probably could have got more. But to me, it was like, I looked at it from like how I look at stuff. I'm like, all right, well, we're using their kitchen, and like, we're not building a restaurant in their parking lot. So like that should be cheaper because we're using their stuff.
Yeah.
And like we hit them like dead fair, and they thanked us for that. And then I got off and I texted Gina, I'm like, yo, it took 2 years, but we made money. Like,
we got there. We did it.
Because like we made money, and like when we first started it, like we're like, all right, like it's crazy to see where it's going. Because in the beginning, like we were making bagels, but we didn't have a good home mixer. So I was like, well, let's just do pop-ups. So we did pop-ups and took all the profit and then bought like, I don't know, it was like an $800 whatever's like right before you would go commercial mixer. And then like from that, then we sold bagels. And like, so we bought things for the business, but it got to a point where we didn't need anything anymore. But then it was this like weighing thing where then now we had to like tell people what our worth is. And we never wanted to do that, because it's, when you're just doing something you love, it's not about money. And then when you have to make it about money, there's like this awkwardness that we both were like, we don't want to tell you, and they're willing to pay because they love what we're doing. And then like it was cool to be like, yeah, this is like, when we did that, I was like, like it starts relieving pressure of opening. So I'm like, no, we're doing it right. But it's hard to do that. It takes years of just
so
underselling
hard.
yourself.
Oof.
You're good.
There go the Italian.
You finally got comfortable where you're like, I don't have to sit like a board.
I think that's why I was so stiff, because I was scared.
You're fine.
Okay.
Nothing happened.
I was like, just don't move. No sudden movements. Nothing will break. Because I didn't sign anything if I break something.
No, you're
Like
good.
a break it, you bought it type
You're
of
good.
thing.
I'm leaving everything in this basement and burning it when I leave.
Okay, well. But yeah, I think it's that hurdle that you just have to overcome yourself. And
It's tough.
It is. And I used to do, I would look up like pet shows to go to, and I would set up a booth. And sometimes those booths are freaking expensive to get in and pay, and you're spending your day. And I'm hoping to like book. And because of how my work was, I had to charge up front, which some people are like, I'm not giving you my money, because right now I'm walking away with nothing and trust that you are going to do this.
But then reverse is, well, I'm not going to draw this and hope you pay me.
Yeah. And I've had that happen
Yeah.
where I've done something because I'm like, oh, I'll just draw it and then you can pay me later, and then never hear from them. And I'm like, what the hell am I going to do with this dog that I've custom drawn for you? I can't just sell it.
It's like close the eyes out so it looks like it's dead.
I
Here's
know.
your animal back.
Here's your dog.
Here's your dead dog.
I recently had that happen. It was a friend of mine, and he's like, oh, this woman has her dog she once drawn, and she sent me all these photos, and I'm looking at them. I'm like, well, this one has white on the ears, this one has black, this one has brown in the face. So I message her and I'm like, is this the same dog? I'm like, not that I'm doubting what you're sending me, but they all look different. And she's like, no, this is my dog, draw it. So I spent like hours and hours drawing, and it was an 11 by 14. So it was a decent size. And I thought it looked exactly like what she sent. And she's like, this is not my dog. I want a refund. And I was just like, well, normally I try to like keep my cool, because you have to. It's like you're representing yourself. I don't want I feel like bad news spreads quicker than anything good you'll ever do.
Yeah.
And so I said to her, I'm like, well, this is my portrait. I get to do with what I want. If I sell it for double, I'm keeping all of it. I'll send you your refund. So what do? I ripped it in half in like this freaking, I was so pissed. I just like shredded as much as I could and threw it out. And I was like, fine, moving on.
I like that though. I like that. I feel like sometimes you need to do that.
Yeah, I had to release something. Some kind of anger.
It sucks. I mean, I feel like people don't hear that side of it enough. Where like you spend all that time on it, and they're like, "Nah, I don't want this anymore." And it's like, dude, just because I'm not working next to you at work doesn't mean that this wasn't something I worked really hard on.
Yeah, I worked so hard, and I think that was. I can't complain, because that was the only time that happened where someone was. She was just like. She was nasty, and I just couldn't take it. And
Fuck your dog.
Fix you.
That's awesome. Where do you see, like, what do you want to do next? Like, are you just going to keep growing what you're doing now? Do you see, like, getting into different style things? Like, what do you want to do with Twisted Plot Co.? Like, what's coming up next with it?
I definitely want to keep going with portraits just because I enjoy those. But I also really like painting. So I had picked up a couple canvases that I'm going to stretch, and I think I'm going to start a series that's just something different and put it out there and just get feelers for what people think. Because right now, I mean, they just, oh, you work at Lost Tavern, you do the labels and you do portraits. That's it. Like, can you do anything else? And so I think I want to try to get my feelers out. Still doing art, but kind of a different
Do you
style.
have a concept you're going to do?
I do. Yeah.
What's the vibe of it?
So I really want to go out west, and I've been looking at a lot of artists that are from that area. I want to go to Jackson Hole before I die, so I hope my body doesn't give out before then. Don't you dare do it. I definitely want to try to do some like Western inspired and something along those lines. I don't want to give too much away, but
So will you travel to get inspired and then work on it?
that's what I would like to do.
Yeah.
And in my head too, I'm thinking landscape, that type of thing, and then other stuff that's not landscape that I'm thinking.
Do you ever get asked to do like murals or like bigger projects like that?
Yeah, so a couple murals I've done, and then I also do chalkboard artwork.
Yeah.
And I've done it at Pearly Baker's. I've done it at Social Still, Suddenly Samantha and Easton, and I also work for them too. I do run their social media. I do like T-shirt design work for them and just some fun stuff on the side. Where else? I do Lost Tavern's chalkboard. I think those are the only ones, but I try to get around, and that's how I can spread some more artwork that's not
That's cool.
label artwork.
Yeah, I didn't know you did all that extra stuff.
Yeah.
I didn't know you did social media and did T-shirt designs.
Yep. Shh. No,
You're like, do not contact me.
but I've also done tattoo design too. I
Yeah.
don't do tattoos, but I have people contact me just because they know my style and want me to come up with something for them. So that's something fun that I get to do too.
It's been a refreshing interview to talk to someone who has pushed something to a point where you literally have different avenues of taking your creative drawings and your art and everything that you can do, and you can literally apply it into different things, whether it's a T-shirt design, whether it's a pet portrait, whether it's a label for a thing, and like that is just it's how I like to set things up. And I don't meet a lot of people who set it up the same way as me, and I might be wrong stating this, but like I like to just constantly be doing different things, and if I start working on something and I get stuck on it, I like to go to something else.
Yeah.
And it seems like you have it set up to where no matter which way you're turning, art is involved, and then now art is completely in your life, and then that makes you feel whole.
Yeah.
Am I correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Not a lot of
it's a
people
good
do
way to
that.
look
yeah,
at it.
yeah. I try and explain to people when they if I have a friend or something who's like stuck at a job, and it's hard to like tell someone to where to start on doing that, because looking at where I'm at now and how long I've been working on this, I was 21, I'm 43. So like that's how long it took for me to be able to turn any which way I am, and I'm doing something I love.
Yeah.
And you can do that. And you have inspired me to do more. You have filled me up with a creative sense, and this is why I enjoy doing this. And we talked a little bit before we did this, and this is why I asked you to come on. It's not often I get to meet and talk to someone who is trying to passionately do something they love 360 throughout the whole day. So I thank you for coming on. You're an inspiration with everything you have going on in your personal life. You crush social media, and it's fun to follow, and keep doing everything you're doing on there, because I'm sure there's people that are struggling or going through something similar, and you give them hope. I want to give you a chance to close out with how anybody can buy anything you're doing, get a hold of anything you're doing if they want their pets, whether or not they're going to pay you or not. But
You can pay me or not.
How do they get a hold of your
Or
social media or where you
You
are?
can pay me to rip up the drawing that I've
Yeah,
done.
you should start filming those.
And for an additional fee, I'll let you watch.
Hey everyone, this is Patty. Just ripped her dog up. This bitch didn't
Wait,
pay me.
this could become a thing.
Yeah,
Hold on.
you could make reels doing that. I'll help you.
Yes. Yeah. So I don't have an official website, which I'm still looking at doing probably soon based on some of the direction that I want to go in just to sell it easier. But I am on Facebook under Gretchen Gross, and then on Instagram under the Twisted Plot Co.
Cool. I like that you don't have a website.
I'm too cheap.
Websites
right now.
are a nightmare, and the one I have isn't really being used. And it took a lot of time, and my friend did it and put a lot of work into it, and I just feel like it's underutilized. And I don't. I'm going to talk to him soon, and I'm gonna be like, hey, like we need to change a lot of that and like cut the fat off. But I like that you don't have a website.
Yeah,
I
and
think
in my head, I'm too like 1 minute I'll be like thinking one direction and the next another direction, and
it cuts out a lot of bullshit. Because I got a website, but then I do all my work via Instagram.
Yeah.
Instagram's so easy to use because even if you don't give out your personal number, you can choose whether or not to open it. So it's kind of like having the inbox. But I don't like sending out emails. And then like even when I have to contact someone, if I want them to come on and it's like somebody who's got like a bigger following, you have to go through like their email system. That's probably like going to a handler. But like I really like just keeping it on Instagram, and you can do business
direct
there.
Contact and
and then like you can send them somewhere else to pay, or they can do Venmo. Like there's a million different ways to do it. I think eventually websites, for the sense of like what we're talking about, like coming up and having that as like your home base, like I just don't think that's what it's going to be anymore.
Yeah, same.
Without getting into boring web talk, well, I'll let you go. If you're a first-time listener, first-time watcher, it's neveragainstudio.com. That is the website that we talk about nobody using. If you go there, it has the audio and the video on there. If you go to my Instagram, there's a link there to get to my apparel. And Spotify is where everything's going to go. YouTube's for the video. Subscribe to that. There's more things coming down the way. Thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on. I want to have you back on when I have the new studio, and there's going to be like art stuff in there, so maybe we can work on painting something, one of the walls, or doing something.
Sweet.
But I do want to put your art in there, so regardless of whether I have to order it and then buy it off you, or maybe I'll get you to do an old dog and then tell you I'm not going to pay you.
Okay.
But we'll work in some sense for the new studio. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you.
What up?
Never Again Radio. Get into it, brother.